Hey, Kitchen Stewardship, Katie Kimball here, and we are talking about a topic today that actually, when I shared a few of my coming soon topics in an email recently, more than anything else, people wanted to hear about heavy periods and irregular cycles. So I'm happy because I know I'm not alone because I've struggled with estrogen dominance and super ridiculously heavy periods, the kind that make my friends' jaws drop. Like, what? That's possible? No. Okay, so I am so blessed and honored to have Nicole Jardim here. She is known as the period girl, and she's the expert where maybe I am not. And we're going to talk today about those heavy periods, what they look like, where they might be coming from, and then, thank goodness, flipping the script and what we can do to fix those up. Thanks for being here, Nicole.
Oh, you're so welcome, Katie. I'm so excited to be here with you chatting about all of this because actually more than 25% of women deal with heavy periods. It's kind of a big deal. We should be definitely talking about it.
I believe it. And I love that you're excited, and that's why you do what you what you do. So what is normal and what is heavy? Let's start there.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, what does a heavy period actually look like?
Mm-hmm.
Women often describe the can't stop, won't stop periods that they experience as a pretty major disruptor of their lives. And I know you can relate to that. And I find that from, whether it's work, going on dates, going to the beach, exercising, it can become really unmanageable. And so I think I wanted to start with just like some of the symptoms that people might experience if they have a quote unquote heavy period. So if your period is consistently lasting more than 7 days, that's usually a sign, or you're changing regular tampons, pads, or period underwear, because that's a thing now too,
No, yeah.
more than every 2 hours, every day, at least for the first 3 days of your period, or you're changing a full 30 milliliter menstrual cup more than twice a day, that's also a sign. And then a lot of other women experience things like needing a pad and a tampon to control their menstrual flow, or needing to get up and change pads or tampons in the middle of the night, menstrual blood that has clots that are usually like an inch or longer, or you experience tiredness, or you just feel absolutely exhausted by your period, maybe even shortness of breath, or you've been diagnosed with anemia. Those are usually signs of that, signs that you have a heavier than average flow. And I think that it's also important to know that normal periods are defined as vaginal bleeding that occurs every 25 to 35 days. And, this lasts for about 3 to 7 days. So like I said, anything over 7 days is usually a sign. And really, we're looking for an average blood loss of about 35 to 50 milliliters. That's only about 7 to 10 teaspoons.
And if you use a menstrual cup and you have heavier than that, you're like, oh, that's normal?
Yes, exactly. Right? I know. So it's really important to have an understanding, I think, of what exactly it looks like. And I think, again, a regular pad or tampon holds about 5 to 12 milliliters of blood, or that's 1 to 2 teaspoons. So really, most women do not change pads or tampons when they're fully soaked anyways. So if you have about like 6 to 10 pads or tampons that are fully soaked, that's considered a normal period. But anything over like 20 pads or tampons in a period is, again, a sign potentially that you've got a heavier than average period.
Got it. Okay, so enough of us are quietly raising our big toe saying, yep, that's me. What in the world? Like, root cause. I'm all about root cause. And I know it has to be some or, a couple. And in fact, the reason I emailed is because I got an email from Nicole. It said, does sugar and alcohol hurt your period and hormones? And I'm like, I got to open this one. Let's talk about that.
Yes, girl, we have to talk about it.
I know. I don't want to talk anymore.
Well, I feel like, okay, so we should talk about, the root cause and some of the times where it might be okay or normal. I think that, on the ends of the reproductive age spectrum, so the teenage years, I have found that heavier periods are definitely more common. This is because, an adolescent has gone from never having an ovulatory cycle in their lives to having an ovulatory cycle. And it actually changes, and I think their period changes, quite drastically from the time they get it throughout their teenage years. And that, of course, is dependent on other lifestyle factors too. But we're going from not ovulating to ovulating. And so there are a number of times where a teenager might have an anovulatory cycle, meaning that they don't ovulate, they don't make a lot of progesterone, they have high estrogen, and that can trigger these heavy periods. So that's something to think about that is potentially normal. And the other end of the spectrum is when we're in perimenopause, where we're now winding down ovulatory cycles, and kind of the same thing happens. So it's important for us to recognize that in those two scenarios that, it's not necessarily normal, but it's definitely more common. Mm-hmm. And so the other things, though, I think that are so important is to understand, again, when it comes to hormones, what I've found a lot of is that when we're too heavy on the estrogen side and we're not balancing out with progesterone, that definitely triggers these heavier periods, right? So estrogen is like the stimulatory hormone, and it's proliferative. So it actually increases your uterine lining, and again can make it heavier flow based on a bigger uterine lining. And then the other thing that I think is important for women to understand is thyroid imbalance. We don't realize this. Our thyroid actually impacts our progesterone levels and our estrogen levels. And if we have low thyroid function, we may have heavier periods. So I really encourage women to get testing done for a thyroid, like a full thyroid panel, which includes TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and then the thyroid antibodies, just so that you can be clear on what's potentially going on with your thyroid if you have a heavier period. Yeah. So those are like
any way for the estrogen progesterone balance. Is there any way other than blood tests to like see symptoms of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, heavy periods is definitely one of them. Heavy periods, clots, as well as, if you've been diagnosed with a condition like endometriosis or uterine fibroids or adenomyosis, those usually are a sign that there's an estrogen progesterone imbalance going on, and really a sign as well of an inflammation situation. Like we were talking about sugar and alcohol. I mean, I would say those are the two biggest culprits in our modern day life in terms of what's happening with hormonal imbalances. So those are signs, as well as, breast tenderness, menstrual migraines, period pain. Those are also potential signs too of that estrogen progesterone imbalance. And I just want to add one more thing too. There are conditions. There's blood clotting conditions. There's von Willebrand's disease, and there are others as well. Hemophilia is another one. I highly recommend women, if they have, chronically heavy periods and they're flooding, even where you're losing way more than 80 milliliters of blood a month every time you have your period, to get tested. Your doctor can test for blood disorders like that, and then they would refer you out to a specialist.
Got it. Okay. So there are maybe some outliers, the age, some of those diseases, but I'm guessing with 25% of women experiencing these, there are some kind of consistent, subjects that we can attack here. How can we attack? We need some help.
Yes, definitely. So I would say that the first thing is to figure out what's going on, right? So get tested. I mean, get a diagnosis, figure out what could be the root cause of it. Like you said, you love this root cause perspective, and I agree completely. I feel, my friend Carrie Jones, she's the medical director at the Dutch Test, and she's always like, test, don't guess. And I love that because it's really true. So I'm a big fan of getting tested, getting a diagnosis, because if you have a blood clotting disorder, for instance, your treatment is going to look different to someone who maybe has endometriosis. Not vastly different, but there will definitely be different protocols. And so when you figure out what could be causing it, then that is going to make life a lot easier. But generally speaking, I think the first thing we really have to look at is our liver health. And so for anyone who does not understand what your liver does, it does a whole bunch of things. Actually, it's a safety net, catches a bunch of stuff. But in particular, one of its roles is to help our bodies detox excess estrogen, or estrogen that has potentially been used by the body and now needs to be moved out of the system and out through bowel movements. And what happens is the liver gets so bogged down sometimes, and because of environmental toxins and the food that we're eating and potentially alcohol or prescription meds, that it doesn't do its job very well. So we need to focus on liver-loving foods, and the cruciferous veggies, I think, are a really big part of that. So any of the leafy greens like kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, broccoli, and broccoli sprouts in particular have a very strong impact on our liver health and its ability to detox estrogen, as well as dandelion root tea, beets, any of these liver loving foods, any of the white vegetables as well, like onions and garlic and things like that.
Okay.
So we have to support our liver health. That's a big part of estrogen detoxification. And then for our gut health, it's similar, right? So it leaves your liver and then it goes over to your gut and then it's removed by your body. But if we're constipated, for instance, we end up in huge problems because our body can actually reabsorb that estrogen that's been deactivated by your liver, reactivate it, and then it can circulate all over again. This is a huge problem. So
that kind of cause the estrogen dominance. It's just
Pardon?
old. The estrogen dominance could be caused by like old recycled estrogen, kind of.
Yes, because it can reactivate. So there's two parts of that with the gut. The first is, if we're constipated, then yes, that could be problematic. So we have to make sure we're having a bowel movement at least once a day, and so that we are getting all of that stuff out. The second thing is something called beta-glucuronidase. And so beta-glucuronidase is an enzyme in the gut that causes estrogen to be reabsorbed in the body. So if you have high levels of that, then you potentially will have an issue with estrogen being reabsorbed and reused. And so we need to make sure that we do not have high levels of beta-glucuronidase. And one of the ways to do that is with a supplement called calcium D-glucarate. And so I recommend that in a lot of instances for women who have heavy periods, because that is one way to help combat them. Okay. So, but in all, like, we really have to look deeper at our gut health, and that goes far beyond our video and blog post, of course. Yeah. But we really have to figure out what's going on with our gut. And I highly recommend, working with someone one-on-one if you do feel like you have severe gut health issues. And most women who have hormonal problems have gut health issues because it's all connected, as you can see.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I want to say too is nutrients. So iron, magnesium, calcium, zinc, all of these nutrients are so critical for our menstrual and reproductive health. And so I'm a big fan of some kind of, broad spectrum multivitamin. I feel like that really helps. And, a lot of women just take a prenatal when they are trying to get pregnant. But I think that a multivitamin can be really, really helpful for women, just so that we're covering our bases. I mean, if you don't do that, then I would strongly recommend just magnesium and zinc and magnesium, zinc, and selenium. Actually, I forgot to mention selenium as minerals on their own that would be really helpful for for period problems, in particular, heavy and painful periods.
Mm-hmm. This is very interesting because you literally just listed what's on my supplement list right now through testing. Like, did the testing, and I'm like, I eat really well, but I'm low in zinc, calcium, magnesium, selenium for the thyroid, whatever the other thing was you said. Like, I'm like, maybe that's why I'm getting a little bit better. But test, don't guess is so important. Do you have a favorite multivitamin brand or something to look for? Because I know a lot of those with the pills, like, really compact. It's just going through and coming out in the toilet anyway. We're not absorbing it.
I know, it's not. I'd agree. I really love the brand Seeking Health. I have used it for a number of years now. Dr. Ben Lynch, who owns it, I originally started following him because of his research on MTHFR, the MTHFR gene mutation. And I really was obsessed with his work in this world because nobody was really talking about it 5 to 7 years ago. Anyways, he has this company called Seeking Health, and I just feel like he maintains so much integrity with his ingredients. So I'm a big fan of it.
Mm-hmm. It's good to know, because just to say take a multivitamin, like you can't really go to Costco
or
and get success. Don't do that. It's not really going to help. So I thought that was important to say. Okay, yes, so absolutely. Basically, root cause is similar to a lot of other things: gut health, detoxification health, and so if you have heavy periods, likely if you can start to fix them, I'm thinking women are going to see improvements in other areas of their life, like maybe energy or depression, stuff like that.
Exactly. I could not agree with you more. I feel like when we start to take control, because I think for women, for the most part, we're kind of told that these are outside of our control and you're just stuck with the heavy periods or the period pain, which is another huge problem, as you know. And I think ultimately, if we're given back control and we're now back in the driver's seat, we can start to really make huge changes or small changes that are going to result in huge benefits.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. This has been helpful and interesting for me, and I know that at least 25% of women out there, if not 99%, are going to absolutely benefit from this. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate it.